Hello and welcome to the next video of Python Byte series. In this video, we'll see what are functions and its uses. Hello and welcome to the coding section of Python Bytes. In this part, we'll see how to define functions and how to use them in our code. So let us start with defining a function. To define a function, we use the keyword def and the name of the function, so add, and then we give out arguments over here that are supposed to be used in the function. So a and b are the arguments, and our operation is total a plus b because we are adding the two numbers which are given as argument, and we'll return total. We'll define one more function, define subtract, and we'll have two arguments over there also, a comma b. So you can use the same variables as arguments for two functions because these variables are local to the function. They will have no relation with each other outside the function. So we'll see diff a minus b, and we will return the diff. So we have defined two functions, and now let us see how we can use them in our code. So if there were, we can declare two variables. C is equal to 10 and D is equal to 8. And now let us find total. So we use the function add and we give C comma D, and for the difference diff we give subtract C comma D. And now let us print the outputs total and print diff. Let us run it, and we see that the total of 8 and 10 is 18 while the difference is 2. So you see that we can call these functions as many times as we want in our code or in the function. So let us give another try. Let us define two more variables, e as 30 and f as 20, and do the operations on them. So ef total is add e comma f, and ef diff is equal to subtract e comma f, and let us print ef total and ef diff, and let us run it. So we see that the total of these two numbers is 50 and the difference is 10. Now we see here in the function add, it was a single line operation in the function. So it was quite easy, we could have repeated this, but imagine that now if you want to check that if the variables are given as integers, because we are doing operations on integers only right now here. So we'll see that if type a, so a is not equal to integer, we return it as false. We return false. So we know that there was no operation done. Okay, otherwise it will return over here as total. So for example, we'll also import the same statement in our subtraction also, subtract, and we'll just define here a as, so over here the first variable will declare as a string, and when we run it we get false and false because in over here it went into the check function and saw that a is not an integer, and over also here also it saw that a is not an integer. So we were giving out, if it was not an integer and if this check was not there, we can see what happens. Just remove it from one place and run. It will say that unsupported operand, string and integer, because Python cannot operate with an integer and a string. It will give out a type error. So for these kind of things, we kind of put a check over here. There is another way in a function we can put a check. So we can remove this and we can remove this also. And let us see. We can put a check over here with a colon. We put integer. So we define that this input is going to be an integer. And over here also let us define it as integer. You can define it as a float also because we know that integer is a subset of float. We can define them as a float, but for here we are going to check their integer. And over here we see that now what has happened when we defined C, it says expected int got string instead. So we'll be, oh, it is something wrong. So we can just change it over here 10, and this yellow mark which was there will disappear. And now we run it, we get the output 18 and 2 again. So we see here that Python gives us a function creating capability which will help us in reducing our code writing and make the reusability easy. So we'll see more of these functions in the class video that we are going to see tomorrow. Now we learned what are functions in Python. We also learned how to define functions and use them in our code. To continue this discussion, I've created a Discord server. Please find the link to the server in the description below. Leave comments in the comment section with your questions and feedback. Please like and subscribe to this video. Your like and subscription help me with reaching wider Python loving community. Goodbye till next time. Keep coding.